Chess for Children. We make children smarter.
Hello, Chess for Children kids, and it's me, Mr. C, and today's subject will be Morphy's Checkmates.
Chess for children kids, so much fun you'll split a rib. Summer, winter, fall, we'll checkmate them all with a Chess for Children game.
Paul Charles Morphy was an American chess player. He is considered the greatest master of his era and an unofficial second world champion from 1851 to 1860. A chess prodigy, he was called the pride and sorrow of chess because he had a brilliant career, but he ended it while he was still young. Bobby Fischer and Vishwanathan Anand, both world champions, consider him among the 10 greatest players who ever lived. But today we are not talking about Morphy and his career. What we are going to talk about is Morphy and the checkmates that are named after him. There are 3 checkmates named after Paul Morphy. They are 1. Morphy's Mate, 2. Morphy's Deferred Mate, and 3. The Opera Box Mate. These are the 3 checkmates named after Paul Morphy. Number 1, Morphy's Mate. This is the position of the basic pattern of Morphy's Mate. Take a second or two to see if you can figure out the answer. Well, let's look at it. Now, the black king has 2 squares, G8 and H8. Well, what can take away G8? Well, the rook. What can take away H8? The bishop. But what's in the way? The bishop. So the queen comes in and takes the bishop. And mate is forced by G7, so he has to take. And then the rook goes to G1, checking the king. And when the king goes to the corner, the bishop on A1 takes F6, and that is checkmate. Here is a simpler version of Morphy's Mate. White to move and checkmate in 2. And I'll give you a second so you can figure out the checkmate. Again, if we ask ourselves, how many squares does the king have? We find that the king has 2 squares, G8 and H8. Well, what can take away H8? Well, the bishop. And what can take away G8? The rook. And all we need to do is put them together. So, rook takes G7, check, and now G8 is taken away. King must move to H8, and what's in between? What's stopping the mate? The rook on G7. So we just move it back 1 square, or we could move it back further. Whatever square we do except G8, because he'll take us on G8, is checkmate. Number 2, Morphy's Deferred Mate. This is the basic position of Morphy's Deferred Mate. There's only one difference between Morphy's Mate and Morphy's Deferred Mate: the position of the bishop. The bishop is no longer on the square F6, it is on the square E5, and that changes this mate from mate in 2 to mate in 5. Well, let's take a look. How many squares does the black king have? He has, again, G8 and H8. What can take away G8? The rook. What can take away H8? The bishop. So what's the difference? What happens if he just plays the moves? I'll give you a little time to figure out the checkmate. It's mate in 5, white to move. And take that time to figure it out. Okay, well, if white just continues normally, rook to G7, king H8, and rook to G6, guess what? The pawn can go to F6. And now, even though white will be winning, it is not checkmate. Okay, so what's stopping the checkmate? Well, the pawn at f6 when the pawn moves to f6. So what do we do when we realize that something's stopping our checkmate? Well, the first thing we do is we try to eliminate it. And the most brutal way to eliminate it is from this position. Rook takes f7 check. And now the pawn is no longer there. So the king steps over. King's attacking the rook on f7. Rook needs to defend itself and take away a square. King moves here. And now rook g6 is highly effective because the only thing that can block is the rook. And when we take the rook with the bishop, it is checkmate. That is Morphy's deferred checkmate. Be careful not to confuse the two. The opera box mate. The next checkmate comes from a position that is considered probably the most famous game in all of chess, the opera box game. And the checkmate that comes from it, first we will speed through the game till we get to the position, just to give you a choice. By the way, this game is so famous that we will be doing a future video just on this game. But Paul Morphy is white, and he is playing against two people, a count and a duke at the time, who we will get into. Make sure you check out that video because we will definitely be talking about this in the next few days. Anyway, here's the game. And here's the game going to the starting position. And we're not going to annotate it or anything like that. We're just going to get to the position. And right here. Okay. White to move. And checkmate in 2 moves. See if you could see it. Okay. Okay. Well, let's look at the position. What can take away, well, how many squares does the black king have? Well, the black king has only 1 square, the one he's on. Well, what can attack that black king? Well, let's look at the bishop. The bishop is controlling a key square. It's controlling this diagonal d8. And right there, if we could put something on d8, it would be checkmate. But guess what? The knight is in the way. So how do we move the knight? Take a second and see if you could see it. Well, the way we move the knight is to distract the knight. Make it get out of the way. And so we play queen to b8, check. Now the knight has no choice to capture. And when it captures, then the rook delivers the mate on d8. And this is the opera box mate. And there you have it. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you like this video, his name will always be associated with chess. Do whatever you got to do over there. Can you find the checkmate that is your own notification bell so you can be notified? All of that good stuff. You discover. Anyway, you can make a comment. One more thing. Comments. I will definitely respond to them. All had to do with the rook. So this is National Master Steve Colvin. Video we will be looking at. Remember, our next video is with other rook and bishop checkmates. And I will see you later. Thank you.